Hello everyone and welcome back to RPG PhD. I'm Dr. Ben, and today we're deep diving into the most fascinating and tricky parts of world building and game design, how to design your own magic system. Whether you're writing rules for a homebrew RPG, building lore for a novel, or just trying to make sense of why your wizard keeps blowing up the moon, this episode is all about turning imagination into infrastructure. We'll look at the philosophy behind magic, the mechanics that make it playable, and the narrative consequences that make it meaningful. We will be examining the creation of a magic system through various lenses. So sharpen your quills, prepare your mana pool, and let's talk about the cost of wonder. Every magic system starts with a simple but profound question. Why does magic exist in this world? Is it a divine gift, a natural law, a forbidden science, or the last remnant of something ancient? Author Brandon Sanderson famously divides magic into hard and soft systems. Hard systems are rule-bound and predictable. You could think Full Metal Alchemist, D&D, while soft systems are mysterious and narrative. Think Lord of the Rings. But most tabletop role-playing games actually live somewhere in between. You need enough structure to play, but enough mystery to make it feel alive. The key isn't just balance, it's intent. What function does magic serve in your design? In Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, magic is corruption, a chaotic intrusion of the divine into the mortal world. In Numenera, magic is science, the result of ultra-tech, so advanced it appears arcane. In Avatar: The Last Airbender, bending is cultural expression, each element tied to philosophy and discipline. Before you build mechanics, decide what your magic means. Everything else radiates from that core. Before dice, before mechanics, before the first spark or spell effect, there's a reason. Magic isn't just a rule set, it's a worldview. It's how your world defines what power is, who gets it, and what it costs. When you design a magic system, you're not just deciding what spells do, you're defining the metaphysics of meaning, how the impossible behaves, and why it matters. Think of your setting as a conversation with itself. The existence of magic answers a question that world once asked. If magic exists for survival, maybe it's primal, fire stolen from the gods. If it exists for faith, maybe it's moral, a reflection of belief and devotion. If it exists for art, maybe it's expressive, a creative act of shaping the world through imagination. If it exists for chaos, maybe it's transgressive, a force that refuses order, constantly rewriting reality. Each choice shapes your world's tone. In Dark Sun, magic destroys the land. In Eberron, it fuels technology. In Earthsea, it defines identity. The question, why does magic exist, determines whether it's a privilege, a curse, or a language of survival. As Victor Turner might say, it's the social drama of the world's cosmology, the ritual that explains its own origins. Many magic systems are metaphors. They're reflections of human longing, control, and fear. When you design a magic system, you're encoding values. Magic that obeys reason reflects faith in science. Magic that demands sacrifice reflects belief in moral consequence. Magic that corrupts reflects anxiety about progress and temptation. Miguel Sicart in Play Matters writes that every system expresses an ethic. That applies to magic design. In The Witcher, magic mirrors gender and class. Those who wield it are marginalized or feared. In Call of Cthulhu, magic is madness. Knowledge itself is the corruption. Ask yourself, what human truth does my magic dramatize? That answer will make your system feel cohesive, no matter how wild its rules are. Power without cost is spectacle. Power with cost is story. Nearly every meaningful magic system has a logic of loss. Whether it's physical, emotional, or spiritual, the act of using magic must alter something or someone. In Warhammer Fantasy, magic corrodes the soul. In Blades in the Dark, it inflicts trauma. In Numenera, it depletes relics of the past. Scarcity isn't just balance, it's drama. Psychologist Raymond showed that narrative immersion depends on anticipation and consequence. We feel tension because we sense risk. Magic without risk is static. Magic with consequence breathes. Even free systems, like improvisational narrative magic, gain meaning when framed by emotional cost. Perhaps it consumes trust, reputation, or time. The more it costs, the more it means. Every magic system implies a moral philosophy, even if you don't intend it to. If the system rewards transgression, it's maybe more libertarian. If it punishes hubris, it's tragic. If it divides good and evil through magic type, it's didactic. In Vampire the Masquerade, power is corruption by design. Every ability is a moral compromise. In The One Ring, even noble magic flirts with the shadow. Philosopher Emmanuel Levinas argued that ethics begin in the encounter with the other. In role-playing games, that other might be divine, natural, or supernatural. Magic is the dialogue, an exchange between human will and cosmic consequence. So, when you create your world's spellcraft, decide, is it ethical to use? Is it right to do? Is it a sin or a rebellion? Every spell tells a story about who deserves power and why. Even the most dreamlike magic benefits from structure. Without logic, wonder becomes confusion. With too much logic, it becomes engineering. The solution is internal consistency. Magic doesn't have to obey real-world physics, but it must obey its own. Define its constraints clearly. Does it break the conservation of energy? If so, what replenishes it? Does emotion shape it? Then emotion becomes measurable. Does belief sustain it? Then culture becomes ecology. As Peter Brook said in The Empty Space, theater is real life heightened by order. Magic works the same way. It's chaos organized into meaning. Design the physics of belief that govern your world. Then let your players find their way inside that order. As I mentioned before, Brandon Sanderson's famous laws of magic divide systems into hard, logical, rule-driven, and soft, mythical, narrative. But that spectrum isn't a dichotomy, it's a design tool. Predictable cause and effect, strategic choice, mastery. Soft systems like The Lord of the Rings, or even magic from Studio Ghibli films, preserve wonder, mystery, awe, and emotion. Most great role-playing game systems live between those poles. What you might call elastic magic, structured enough for play, but flexible enough for story. Elastic systems let the players learn magic through play, not merely memorization. They're designed to feel discoverable, the joy of uncovering hidden order. As designer Robin Laws might put it, rules are scaffolding, discovery is the art. If gods exist, then magic is theology made tangible. In religious worlds, magic becomes proof or temptation. It forces characters to wrestle with belief, authority, and humility. Ask, is divine power earned or bestowed? Does faith direct magic, or does magic test faith? What happens when a god goes silent? In Dungeons & Dragons, divine casters embody loyalty. Their magic ends when faith wavers. In Symbarium, blasphemy corrupts both body and spirit. In Planescape, belief itself reshapes reality. Theology of magic gives your world metaphysical texture. It transforms spellcasting into prayer, rebellion, or revelation. And it asks the most powerful question in design. Who decides what's sacred? When magic becomes systematized, it turns into technology, and that transition reshapes everything. Magic as technology shifts storytelling from mystery to mastery. It enables social change, class divides, and ethical questions of power at scale. In Eberron, for example, magic drives trains and factories. In Arcane, it divides the rich and the oppressed. When spellcraft evolves into infrastructure, magic stops being mystical. It becomes political. Philosopher Bruno Latour called this process blackboxing, when we stop questioning how something works and start depending on it. A world where magic is industrialized is a world that's forgotten its gods. Designers can lean into that, using magitech as a metaphor for modernity, hubris, or progress. But remember, the more systematized magic becomes, the more you need new mysteries to replace it. The more your world explains, the less it can believe. So when you design a magic system, you're not just building a mechanic, you're building a philosophy. Every rule, every cost, every ritual is a statement about how your world sees power. As art, as faith, as survival, or as sin, or something else. The purpose of magic isn't to explain the impossible, it's to make the impossible mean something. So, before you write your first spell, ask yourself the oldest question in storytelling. Why do they need magic at all? Because once you know that, everything else, the costs, the rules, the tone, the gods, will follow. Narrative and dramatic function, the story beneath the spell. When we talk about magic in role-playing games, we tend to think about what it does. The damage, the healing, the teleportation. But magic is more than a mechanical function. It's a dramatic force. Every spell, ritual, shimmering rule about how the impossible works is a statement about your world's emotional logic and about the kind of stories your players will experience. In good design, magic doesn't just change the world, it changes how the story is told. In narrative design, every major force, war, nature, time, behaves like a character with motives and moods. Magic should too. When your system gives magic personality, it starts to act like an unseen participant in the story. Maybe the winds of magic in Warhammer Fantasy are temperamental, drawn to blood and chaos. Maybe in your system, divine miracles only occur when mortals perform acts of genuine compassion, like a deity's emotional barometer. Game theorist Miguel Sicart says that systems carry values. A magic system with agency carries personality. It can love, punish, withhold, or seduce. It doesn't need to speak, but it should have opinions. When players feel like the magic itself is watching, that it can turn on them, it transforms from a tool into a relationship. Every ritual is an expression of meaning. When your characters cast a spell, they're not just manipulating energy, they're externalizing emotion. In mythic structures, rituals often mirror internal change. Joseph Campbell's monomyth presents transformation through symbolic acts, death and rebirth, purification, temptation. Magic can serve that same function in games. A resurrection spell isn't just a plot device, it's an emotional test of what life is worth. A curse isn't just damage over time, it's guilt made visible. Conflict is the engine of story, and magic defines the scale of that conflict. If magic is easy and safe, tension dissolves. If it's dangerous and costly, every spell becomes a gamble. The mechanical risk of using magic is the dramatic tension. In the One Ring, every invocation of power invites corruption. The more the heroes resist darkness, the closer they brush against it. In Dungeons & Dragons, high-level magic escalates from personal conflict to geopolitical impact. Teleportation, weather control, resurrection. The trick is to let your mechanics serve the narrative curve. Early magic should solve small, personal problems. Late magic should raise existential ones. That's how you align gameplay with mythic pacing, what Robin Laws calls emotional cadence. Design your power curve like a dramatic arc. The higher the magic, the higher the cost of failure. Every system must decide one crucial thing. Can magic rewrite reality or only bend it? Unlimited magic may sound exciting, but it's dramatically unstable. If players can rewrite fate at will, narrative consequence evaporates. The trick is to treat reality not as a wall to destroy, but as a negotiating partner, a force that pushes back. In Mage the Ascension, every act of reality bending risks paradox, the backlash of a universe correcting itself. That's powerful design because it keeps cosmic potential tied to narrative risk. Reality in your world should have an immune system. Every time someone casts something truly world-shaking, reality should flinch, or maybe even fight back. If there's one rule that makes magic matter, it's this. Wonder is only powerful when it costs something. Every spell should leave a mark, physical, moral, emotional. Maybe magic consumes vitality, sanity, or memory. Maybe every miracle saves one person but dooms another. The point isn't punishment, it's consequence. When players feel that every act of magic ripples through the world, their awe becomes earned. Psychologist Raymond writes that immersion relies on anticipatory simulation. Our brains predict outcomes, feel tension, and imagine consequences. Magic without cost denies players that tension. Every game master or writer faces this temptation, the miraculous fix, the sudden prophecy, the spell that solves everything. And sometimes, yes, that's exactly what the story needs. The divine hand descending from the clouds. But overuse drains tension. If you're going to use Deus Ex Machina magic, do it knowingly. Make the miracle costly, strange, or partial. Maybe it solves one problem but creates a deeper one. In Call of Cthulhu, summoning ancient power may save humanity, but it also invites the horror closer. In The Lord of the Rings, divine intervention, like Gandalf or the Eagles, is rare, symbolic, and thematically loaded. It doesn't erase struggle, it dignifies it. Miracles work best when they complete the story's emotional logic, not when they bypass it. The way magic is spoken says everything about its nature. Words, runes, gestures, these are its grammar, and every grammar has rules. In linguistics, Saussure called this the relationship between signifier and signified. A magic system should reflect that same duality. The word doesn't just name the thing, it becomes the thing. That's why a true name system, like in Le Guin's Earthsea, feels so resonant. Language defines ontology. Knowing the name of something grants power over its essence. When designing spells, make the syntax consistent with theme. Divine magic might use ancient liturgy. Arcane magic might use algebraic geometry. Fey magic might be poetic and metaphorical. Form should follow philosophy. Every spell should sound like it belongs to its worldview. Finally, let's bury one of the great myths of system design, that magic needs to be balanced, that loaded word. In narrative terms, balance is rarely interesting. What matters is contrast. One character's wild chaos makes another's disciplined precision meaningful. One culture's superstition defines another's rationality. As long as each form of magic has distinct narrative gravity, strengths, flaws, and emotional tone, your story remains stable, even if the mechanics aren't symmetrical. As designer Greg Costigan put it, balance is not fairness, it's drama. So let imbalance live. Let some magics be seductive and corrupting, others quiet and pure. The friction between them is your story. When we design magic systems, we're not just defining what's possible, we're defining what's beautiful, dangerous, and sacred. Magic is emotion made mechanical, philosophy made playable. It's how your world expresses love, ambition, fear, and faith, not just through words, but through cause and consequence. So don't just ask what your magic can do, ask what it means, because every spark of wonder should leave a shadow. And that's where the story truly lives. World building and setting implications. When magic becomes the world. Every choice you make about magic ripples outward into architecture, economics, culture, even the weather. If your magic system is the heart of your world, then world building is the circulatory system, the way that magic's energy flows through everything else. So this section is about what happens when you stop treating magic as a character ability and start treating it as infrastructure. When magic is common, it stops being miraculous and starts being municipal. That's where some of the best world building begins. Think about it. If teleportation circles exist, how does that change trade routes? If clerics can cure disease, what happens to medicine? If enchantment makes labor obsolete, what happens to the working class? In Eberron, arcane power fuels industry, skyships, lightning rails, and elemental binding. Magic isn't a mystery, it's an economy. That's why it feels alive. So, designing magic as infrastructure forces you to think like an economist or a city planner. How does magical labor replace or exploit human labor? Who controls the flow of arcane energy? Max Weber's idea of the disenchantment of the world applies perfectly here. Once magic becomes reliable, it loses its aura of awe. That's not a flaw, it's a story engine. Worlds like Arcane and Final Fantasy thrive on that tension, magic as progress and progress as danger. If magic is natural, it must follow laws of ecology: growth, decay, contamination, regeneration. If it's divine, it might create zones of holiness or blight. If it's scientific, it might suffer from entropy or scarcity. Timothy Morton's idea of hyperobjects, phenomena so vast and interconnected that they transcend comprehension, fits perfectly here. Magic can be a hyperobject, omnipresent, vital, and perilous. When you design your setting, ask, where does magic come from and what does it leave behind? Every society organizes power. Magic is no exception. Schools of magic aren't just gameplay mechanics, they're philosophies. Each one reflects a worldview about how reality should behave. In D&D, evocation and necromancy are separated by moral tone. In The Witcher, sorcerers are political actors. In Warhammer, the 8 winds are fragments of primal chaos, each inherently incomplete. Creating schools or traditions of magic lets you dramatize ideology. Does your setting divide magic by method, faith versus study? By ethics, creation versus destruction? By class, nobles study the arcane, peasants pray? Magic schools are not just mechanics, they're worldviews, and often propaganda. There's a spectrum between worlds where magic is felt and worlds where it's managed. In magical realism, the supernatural emerges seamlessly from emotion and culture, like in 100 Years of Solitude. The magic is metaphor. It doesn't need rules because it is the world's emotional logic. In systematic magic, power is structured, defined by mechanics, constraints, and codified understanding. This is your Dungeons and Dragons or Final Fantasy side of the scale. Both are powerful, but they create very different player experiences. Magical realism invites wonder and intimacy. Systematic magic invites mastery and play. The sweet spot for tabletop role-playing games often lies between a world that feels emotionally magical but mechanically coherent. Designers call this the spectrum of explanation, or maybe the threshold of wonder. Keep some of your world's magic unmeasured. Let players bump against mystery even as they master mechanics. What happens when your world understands magic too well? When every miracle is mapped, every incantation patented, every god dissected, what's left to wonder at? This is the death of mystery, a world's rationalization of its own magic. But here's the twist. The death of mystery doesn't necessarily need to kill drama, it just changes it. Once magic becomes technology, your story shifts from discovery to ethics. In Arcane, the question isn't what can we do, but what should we do? In Warhammer, the question is how long can we do it before it destroys us? When divine power and moral power coexist, they rarely get along. The tension between religion and magic is one of the oldest in storytelling, from the Tower of Babel to The Witcher. Ask yourself, does divine magic oppose arcane magic or define it? Are wizards heretics or prophets or something else? Do gods represent mortals who imitate creation? In D&D, divine and arcane coexist uneasily, each with their own cosmological contracts. In Warhammer, the winds of magic are literally shards of divine chaos. In The Witcher, the church persecutes sorcery to maintain political control. Theology versus magic is rarely about belief, it's about monopoly. Who gets to mediate the divine? Who gets to decide what power is pure? In world building, this friction is gold. It gives you politics, philosophy, and emotional weight. The war not just for faith, but for the right to define the miraculous. Mechanics and system design, building the machinery of magic. When people talk about designing magic systems, they usually start with flavor, how it looks, what it does, how cool it feels. But beneath every incantation is machinery, the rules that make magic tick. And good machinery doesn't just deliver power, it delivers rhythm, risk, and meaning. So let's take apart that engine, how magic becomes a game loop, what resources drive it, and how you can make it fail, scale, and surprise, and how every decision choice shapes both player agency and narrative tone. So first let's look at magic as a game loop. Rhythm and reward. Every well-designed magic system runs on a loop, a cycle of choice, cost, and consequence that keeps players engaged. Think of it like respiration. Breathe in risk, breathe out payoff. As Jesper Juul argues, games are built from repetitive structures of meaningful failure. Magic should work the same way. The repetition of casting is what turns a rule into ritual. In Dungeons & Dragons, spell slots create a daily rhythm. In Blades in the Dark, stress and trauma form a tension release cycle. In 10 Candles Light itself is a loop. Every success costs a candle. The trick is to make the act of using magic feel like playing a rhythm instrument. Predictable enough to plan, dangerous enough to thrill. Every loop needs fuel. The resource economy is what defines the moral physics of your world. If magic costs mana, it might be mathematical, a science of expenditure. If it costs fatigue or health, maybe it's visceral, a gamble with your body. If it costs faith, memory, or emotion, it's spiritual, a bargain with your soul. Sid Meier once said that games are a series of interesting decisions. A good cost system makes every cast a decision, not necessarily a reflex. In Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, casting risks corruption. In Mage the Ascension, belief itself is the resource. In other games, the price is physical decay. Each economy tells the player what kind of power this world values. Once you've set the cost, you need to decide how outcomes are resolved. Of course, dice are the most common choice, but every resolution mechanic frames the tone of your world. Dice pools emphasize probability through effort. The more you risk, the better your odds. Single roll tests make magic fast in binary success or failures. Card systems make outcomes feel fated rather than random. And token economies reward long-term narrative control over moment-to-moment precision. When choosing a resolution system, ask, should magic feel scientific, emotional, or mythic? The answer determines whether you roll, draw, or declare. Failure is the soul of drama. If a spell failure just means nothing happens, you might have lost the story beat. Failure should do something, distort, corrupt, echo, or explode. In Warhammer, failed channeling invites demonic interference. In Dungeon Crawl Classics, miscasting mutates the wizard. In Blades in the Dark, consequence clocks escalate danger instead of ending it. A strong failure design turns the dice into moral dice. Every roll asks, what are you willing to risk for power? One of the hardest parts of any system is scaling. Early magic should feel fragile and miraculous. High-level magic should feel vast but still coherent. That means your power curve needs both horizontal and vertical growth. Vertical scaling, spells grow in magnitude from spark to storm. And horizontal scaling is spells diversify, more applications, more flexibility, deeper consequences. If power only increases numerically, it flattens the drama. Instead, scale context. When low-level magic once lit a candle, now it can ignite a war, not because it's stronger, but because the world reacts differently. While magic tables are beloved for a reason, they create unpredictability, but randomness without logic feels arbitrary. The goal is structured chaos, random outcomes that still fit the story's tone. When the table matches tone, even absurd outcomes feel earned. In D&D 5e, Wild Surge rolls sometimes aid the caster, sometimes punish them. Both outcomes are narratively valid because they reinforce chaos as identity. As one designer wrote, uncertainty is the heart of play. Just make sure it's meaningful uncertainty. Progression systems give players a sense of growth, but they also frame identity evolution. Instead of only unlocking bigger numbers, tie progression to narrative milestones. Learning a forbidden school changes how NPCs treat you. Gaining divine favor shifts your moral obligations. Overusing power changes your body or soul. This creates what Miguel Sicart calls ethical gameplay loops, advancement that challenges values, not just stats. Progression should feel like evolution, not inflation. Every component, verbal, material, or somatic, is a story element disguised as a rule. Verbal components reveal intention. Material components reveal economy. Gestures reveal ritual culture. A world where spells require gemstones says something about wealth and privilege. A world where magic relies on dance or breath says something about embodiment and control. You can even tie components to setting ecology, extinct herbs, rare metals, or stolen memories. These make the act of casting a micro-story, a ritual of scarcity and meaning. Finally, decide whether magic in your world is instant or procedural. Spellcraft is tactical, action-oriented, clear, satisfying. Ritual is dramatic, usually slow, communal, filled with tension and anticipation. Both serve different story functions. Instant magic suits adventure pacing. Ritual magic builds atmosphere and gravity. Some systems split them deliberately. D&D's combat magic versus Call of Cthulhu's costly rituals. Others merge them, letting time itself become a mechanic. Every extra minute adds power, but risk accumulates. Think of it like cinematography quick cuts for adrenaline, long takes for awe. Magic systems are games within games, living ecosystems of tension, timing, and meaning. When you tune their mechanics, you're not just balancing math, you're shaping emotion. Every roll, cost, and cooldown is a statement about how power behaves in your world. So when you design your next spell, don't just ask what does it do, ask what does it feel like to use it. Because the best mechanics don't just simulate power, they perform it. You can build the most elegant, balanced, narratively rich magic system in the world, but if it doesn't feel magical at the table, it doesn't matter. Mechanics live in the book. Magic lives in the moment. So in this section, I want to talk about the player experience, co-creation, improvisation, emotional rhythm, and the little rituals that turn die rolls into wonder. One of the boldest and most rewarding choices a game master can make is letting players invent their own magic. When you invite players to co-create spells or effects, you transform them from users into authors. That builds ownership, immersion, and emotional investment. Systems like Fate Core and Mage the Ascension embrace this approach. Players define what their magic looks like, what principles it follows, and how it manifests. The Game Master's job isn't to police creativity, it's to translate imagination into consequence. So some practical tips here are anchor invention in consistency. New magic must fit the world's metaphysics. Ask what's the cost for every new idea. It keeps the magic grounded. Let players discover limitations through play, not preemptive restriction. Improvisational magic thrives on flexibility. Spell effects born in the moment, not locked into lists. But the trick is maintaining friction. Creative freedom still needs consequence. In Dungeon World, cast a spell is a narrative move. The Game Master determines complications on the fly. In Blades in the Dark, rituals are defined collaboratively. Players describe what they want, the Game Master sets costs and risks. Improvisational systems work because they make magic an act of storytelling, not resource management. To keep it grounded, use risk tiers, minor, major, catastrophic. Require narrative components, rare reagents, personal vows, or even time. Treat improvisation as a negotiation with reality, not an override of it. This approach reframes magic as jazz, structured improvisation. The players riff, but the world still keeps the beat. Every game master eventually faces this challenge. How do you teach your homebrew magic system without killing the magic? Start with discovery. First, design. Instead of dumping rules, teach magic through experience. Introduce new mechanics through story beats, the apprentice's first spell, the wizard's first failure. Use tutorial encounters, controlled environments that demonstrate key principles. Encourage note-taking in fiction. Your grimoire records what you've learned. Cognitive research shows that learners absorb systems best when complexity increases gradually and contextually. At the end of the day, designing a magic system isn't about inventing powers, it's about inventing meaning. Every rule you write is a metaphor for belief in systems, in self, in story. Every mystery you leave unsolved gives players room to dream. And every moment of awe you preserve reminds us why we play in the first place. The meta design of magic is the art of balance, not between fairness and chaos, but between understanding and wonder. Well, that wraps up our deep dive on magic design. If you found this episode helpful, please give it a like, share it with your fellow game masters and designers and players, and let me know in the comments what's the most interesting magic system you've ever designed or broken. And as always, thanks for watching. See you next time.